Hello, welcome back. Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger on May 5th, 2022. I guess without any kind of surprise, it's very predictable that yesterday was May 4th, Star Wars Day. So today we're going to be doing something Star Wars related. And no, sadly, I still don't have a Darth Vader. Uh, it's really quite silly because uh, the whole time I was growing up, collecting action figures while I was growing up, I never had a Star Wars action figure. Now that sounds crazy to a lot of people because there were definitely a lot of Star Wars action figures out there. Star Wars toys, Star Wars were everywhere. But I didn't have any Star Wars action figure. The reason being, the Star Wars action figures were made in a 3.5 inch scale, sort of like fitting in with G.I. Joe. And most of the things that I collected were 4 to 5 inches tall, which means, well, you take a Star Wars action figure standing next to a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figure, and it started to look silly. The Star Wars started to look like midgets. So it's because of that I grew up not having a Star Wars action figure. And as years went by, I still kept collecting, not having Star Wars action figure. And I kept saying to myself, if if one day, if someone up there, if some big, all-powerful, all-knowing person up there would grant me this wish, if one day they, the toy makers, come to their senses and start making Star Wars action figures that would fit in with other action figures in the 6 inch, 7 inch scales, because that is what the how big the action figures are nowadays, usually between 6 to 7 inches. If anyone would hear my prayer and make Star Wars action figure in that scale, I would be so happy. I would totally get myself a Darth Vader, because Darth Vader was always my favorite character in Star Wars. Finally, I believe it was around 2013, 2012, 2013. Finally, Hasbro, the company, decided to come up with a new line of Star Wars action figures under the label of Star Wars Black. And these were made in 6 inches, so they fit in with their Marvel action figures, fit in with their Spider-Man action figure, fit in with their G.I. Joe action figures. I was so excited. Like, that was one of the moments in my action figure collecting history that I really felt that excitement. Like, whoa, I totally am going to get me some Star Wars finally. And here we are, almost 10 years afterward. I did end up getting some Star Wars action figures, but I found that I don't really like them. I know, I'm totally going to get crucified by some of you that really love Star Wars action figures or Star Wars movies and stuff like that. Look, I loved the heck out of the Star Wars movies. I even read almost all the Star Wars books, listened to the Star Wars audio dramas, and uh, all kind of other productions. I love Star Wars as a property, but sadly, the action figures are a little bit underwhelming. No, there's nothing wrong with how they're made. They're actually made really well. Hasbro being one of the most prolific action figure makers right now, having so many really good properties and make some really good figures. So there's nothing wrong with how these are made. They're really well made. And there's nothing wrong with their size. They're sized properly. But I guess what really got to me was before when I didn't know what they looked like. I listened to Star Wars books. I read Star Wars books. I watch Star Wars movies. I was free to imagine how cool these characters must look. But when I actually get them in my hand, it's like Star Wars characters are really quite boring. I mean, we when we talk about lightsabers, okay, one of the coolest features in Star Wars lightsabers, right? But when you really think about it, what are lightsabers? They look like flashlights. And when when you put them into toy form, they're basically round tubes, long round tubes in the action figure's hand. They're nowhere as cool feeling or as cool looking as samurai sword or great sword or spears or stuff like that. Like lightsabers really look quite boring. Uh, it's not what I imagined would be in toy form. And then on top of that, it seems like almost everybody in Star Wars look very generic. You have the Jedi, who basically are people who walk around in robes. They kind of like future age Harry Potter characters. They walk around dressed like wizards. They have hood and robes and not much else. They have lightsabers. Yeah. And then you have the other people who either okay the troopers they all basically wear the same armor, especially the clone troopers they basically all look the same. Even the stormtroopers, they may have different colors here and there, but to a blind collector, it's like a lot of these just feel exactly the same. The same armor, the same weapon, the same equipment. They feel exactly the same. Uh, And then you have the rest of the people because it's a Star Wars is an intergalactic space science fiction. So most people wear spacesuits. And honestly, when most people wear spacesuits, when most people end up feeling the same, looking the same. And in addition to that, I don't understand how is it that when we are talking about a property like Star Wars, with so many planets, so many cool looking aliens, we keep getting nothing but human characters. Yeah, I mean, there's like a couple of alien characters like Gamorrean Guard and Admiral Akbar and guys like that. But let's face it, even those guys look basically humanoid. They don't look as cool as, let's say, a Sarlacc or a Rancor. Where's the Rancor? Where's the Sarlacc? Where's the Zillo Beast? Where are those big, cool alien designs that we see in the movies and read about in the books? These are not being made. We get nothing but human characters that basically, after a while, all look the same. I mean, uh, I read in an article that it's like the only kind of woman you find in Star Wars are brunette, short, slender brunette. That's basically like, it's like that's the only kind of female there is in Star Wars, and that almost is true on my shelf. Uh, and guys basically all built the same, they're the same size. You don't see like really big guys, really small guys, and that and stuff like that. Really fat guys, really skinny guys. Like every guy looks the same. So yeah, I mean that's my long-winded way to say that after all these years of praying to have Star Wars action figures, when I finally got them, they were sadly underwhelming. And I'm really at the point that I'm kind of going to stop buying them because they just don't do much for me. I still want the Darth Vader though. And the reason is I still haven't gotten a Darth Vader is every time a Darth Vader became available, seems like I was having financial crunches and I just wasn't up to buying one. So I kept missing out on Darth Vader. Um, so anyway, that is my personal Star Wars story. So now let's look at a couple of Star Wars action figure characters that actually do impress me quite a bit. This unlikely pair of heroes are from the Rogue One Star Wars movie, which I was surprised that how much I enjoyed it. Like, I really wasn't expecting to enjoy Rogue One because it didn't have any character that I recognized from the original Star Wars. It had a basically really lame plot. Uh, you have a bunch of uh, soldiers, rebels, that decided they want to go steal the plan for the Death Star from the Imperial, and in the end, everybody died. Yeah, spoiler alert. Sorry about that. Spoiler alert. Just in case, I mean, can it be anyone haven't watched it? I mean, it's been so long. I bet the rest of you have all watched it. Or if you haven't, then you're obviously not interested in watching it. So spoilers, okay, right? So yeah, that's basically Rogue One. Yeah. So the rebellion, aka the good guys, there's this bunch of soldiers that found out that the bad guy, the Imperials, were constructing this super space weapon, the huge space station that could destroy entire stars at once, really like super weapon. And they decided to send a bunch of volunteers in the, to steal the blueprint of the Death Star so they can destroy it. Uh, and then, yeah, like I said, in the end, even though they succeeded in stealing the blueprint, everybody freaking died. So that's basically Rogue One, right? Uh, so this pair of action figures are two characters, in my opinion, two of the most badass characters from the Rogue One movie. Uh, I did not get them because I thought their design looked cool. Because when you really look at them, I mean, the guy on the right, basically a guy in a space suit, in a flight suit, and some pieces of armor, and the guy on the left is basically a guy in a black robe. So the design really is nothing to write home about. Like I said, Star Wars action figure design, character designs, really not the action figure's fault when the character is already designed this way. The designs are just not very impressive, especially when you stand them on the shelf with Ninja Turtles or Masters of the Universe or DC Comics, Superman, Batman, or even Power Rangers or G.I. Joes. Like these guys just don't look that cool. So I did not get them because I like the design. I got them because when I watched Rogue One, these two really jumped out as two of the most badass characters in there. I really liked them in the movie, and so I wanted to have them in hand to know what they look like. And but second, more importantly, because they're both Asian. Now, most of you who been following this channel know how I am always up for Asian representation in characters and in action figures. So there's no question about it that these two really badass soldiers for the rebellion were Asian, and that's rare in Star Wars. Really, like in Star Wars is really white. I mean, this past few years we started to see more black and some Asian representation in Star Wars because of everyone want to be more inclusive and all that stuff. But if you follow the original Star Wars, it's really white, almost like in that future space age, there's nothing but white people and aliens. So they're Asian, and much more than that, both of them are Chinese. Both of these guys are Chinese. Now let me clarify this. They're not Chinese in the movie. Okay, their characters are not Chinese. They just look Chinese, and they were played by Chinese actors. Uh, so that's good enough for me. And more importantly, the guy on the left, his name is Chirrut Îmwe. Chirrut Îmwe, the guy in the black robe, played by Chinese martial art legend Donnie Yen. He's blind. Okay, so now you got a Chinese guy, Chinese looking character who's blind, a super badass in the movie. There's no way I was going to stay away from that. Even if I didn't like the rest of the action figures, I had to get Chirrut Îmwe. And if I had to get Chirrut Îmwe, I had to get his best friend, which is the guy you see on the right, the big guy in the space suit. His name is Baze Malbus. Yeah, like I said, they're not the characters are not Chinese. Those are not definitely not Chinese names. Babe Malbus was played by John Wen. John Wen, most people in North America wouldn't know who John Wen is, okay? Because he's a Chinese actor. But if you mention that name in China, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, people recognize him as one of the best Chinese directors, movie directors, and actors ever. Jiang Wen has gotten many, many awards, directed many, many Chinese movies. He is very well known in the Chinese circle. And here he played the big and gruff and super strong Baze Malbus, the good friend to Chirrut Îmwe. By the way, some people say they were gay, they were actually lovers, but I'm trying not to think about that. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm trying not to think about it. Uh, anyway, um, in the movie, to me, they just seem like best friends. Okay, there was nothing gay about, no gayness going on. At least that's how I choose to read it. Um, so these two, you kind of need both of them because they were like best friends. They're besties in the movie. They're like Chewbacca and Han Solo. Right? They're like Batman and Robin. They have to be together. That's why since I wanted to get Chirrut Îmwe, I had to get his best buddy, Baze Malbus, at the same time. There was a funny little story I read when Donnie Yen, the guy who played Chirrut Îmwe. Now, for those of you who don't know, Donnie Yen is like a real martial art legend, like almost on the same league as Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, and he's uh, played in some very cool movies. Uh, one of which was the Ip Man movie. He plays a teacher to Bruce Lee. So when Donnie Yen was approached and asked if he would play Chirrut Îmwe in the Star Wars Rogue One movie, he turned them down. He didn't want to be in it because Donnie Yen thought that Hollywood only wanted him in that movie because they wanted to meet some stupid quota to show that they have Chinese people in their Star Wars movie. He didn't want to just be a quota. He didn't want to just get included because of that. However, after he got home and his children were so excited because someone told them that their daddy was going to be in a Star Wars movie, and they were so excited because apparently his children were Star Wars fans, he decided to say yes to keep his children happy. Now, that is a touching little side story. Now, those two guys really make an interesting pair, very interesting contrast. Uh, on, on the right, you have uh, Baze Malbus, aka Jian Wang, uh, who is pretty big. I don't want to hear anything about. Wow, that's a really big Chinaman. I mean that is a pretty big guy. No, uh, with his long graying hair and wearing a mishmash like space armor over a flight suit, and just overall look like a kind of a rebel soldier, like resistant fighter kind of guy. And then on the left, you have Chirrut Îmwe, played by Donnie Yen, who is much smaller, has short hair, black hair, short black hair, pale blue eyes, and he's wearing like a ceremonial robe. He just looks like some kind of a monk, and he is totally blind. Now let's take a look at them each individually so we can see a little bit more detail. We'll start with Chirrut Îmwe because he's the main reason why I got this pair. Him being a super badass blind dude in the movie. By the way, obviously Donnie Yen himself is not really blind. He's just a character that's blind. So in the movie, um, Chirrut Îmwe and Baze Malbus, they were uh, they belong to this religious order called the Guardian of the Well. They guard the temple that housed the Kyber crystal, which is the crystal that you need to make lightsabers. Uh, they grew up together, they were best friends, but uh, uh, Chirrut Îmwe turned out to be way more devoted to their religion, while the much gruffer, much more cynical Baze Malbus uh, lost his faith because he witnessed how the citizens and peoples were being abused by the imperial soldiers. Um, Even though Chirrut Îmwe is blind, he has such a sensitivity to the force, to this magical power they call the force, that supposedly only Jedi can utilize, but apparently guardians of the well are taught to utilize the force as well. So in the movie, you see this blind dude that blind, like I said, blind, can't see shit, and yet he can fight Imperial soldiers. He can shoot them with his crossbow or his like bowcaster weapon. He can use his staff to beat them down, and then he can even evade laser fire being directed at him. I mean, one of his biggest and again, spoiler alert, one of his most badass moment, unfortunately, is also the moment before he died, um, was the good guys were trapped on the space station. They needed to disable this energy shield so they can get the signal out there to their own people. But to get to the switch that can turn off the energy shield, you have to run past this open area, and there's a lot of bad guys shooting at them. Like laser fire was coming in every which direction. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and they were trapped. And there's uh, Chirrut Îmwe, our blind guardian of the well, just walked casually through this open area, and all the while chanting his mantra. He walks all the way to the switch and disable the energy shield without getting hit one time in one single time. He just kept chanting, "I am one with the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me." And like, uh, it's like a miracle. Like none of that laser blast hit him, just because he was so faithful to his belief. Unfortunately, unfortunately, even though the laser couldn't hit him, one of the blasts hit a fuel container he was standing near, and the fuel blew up and killed him. So that's how our hero Chirrut Îmwe died. But yeah, it was still really badass to see this blind guy just stroll casually through all those stormtroopers, and they couldn't touch him, and he beat the heck out of them every time they did, he had to fight them. It's just really amazing. The figure itself, he's a kind of a slender, average-looking guy, Asian guy in a black robe with a white sash across his chest. The bottom of his robe are soft good like cloth, so they don't hamper his leg movement. Um, and the inside of the robe is red, while the outside of the robe is black. On his back, he has kind of a narrow, long cape hanging there. Um, Definitely add a little bit more profile to this character, who otherwise would look a little bit bland. One unfortunate thing is the way they made the robe, the bottom half of the robe, because they folded the robe over to give that layered look. So it's a good idea, but it didn't come out quite right. So he looks like he just stepped out of the shower, and he looks like he got a towel around his waist. Since he's made by Hasbro, he obviously has a lot of good joints. His articulation is pretty decent, not quite as good as the Marvel superheroes, but uh, definitely good enough for you to get him into some cool fighting poses. He has joined his neck, shoulder, elbow, chest, wrist, hips, knees, ankles, and there's a joint in his waist. However, the joint in his waist refuses to move. Like when I try to move it, it feels like it's being obstructed by something, and it's just kind of springy. And when I turn his waist, it keeps twisting back into the original position. So I don't know what's up with that. Of course, like any good, independent, blind person, Chirrut Îmwe need his cane. However, because he is a really cool dude and a guardian of the well who can sense the force and do some impossible things like dodge laser fire, he doesn't just carry a white cane. He has this long wooden staff that he carries. At the end of the staff, there's a slice of kyber crystal, the crystal that allows lightsabers to be made. And so this figure does come with a staff that he can hold in his hand and help him navigate where he's going, and also help him beat in the heads of stormtroopers that get in his way. The staff is a little bit droopy because of the soft plastic, but overall, because of how thin and light it is, you shouldn't have much trouble with it staying in the right shape. Now, as a blind martial artist, I can tell you that for most blind martial artists, no matter how badass you are, range, distance is your biggest enemy. When someone is out of our reach, then we suddenly feel out of our element. Well, Chirrut Îmwe, even though he is as blind as a bat, doesn't let that stop him. He is so badass that he managed to overcome this common problem for blind martial artists. Like all the other guardians of the well, he is trained in the usage of this futuristic, high powered crossbow thing called the light bow or the bowcaster, and this allows him to shoot down his enemy from distance away. And apparently he can use his sense to the force to guide his aim, and he is really, really good with this archery weapon. The figure is even articulated enough to hold the bowcaster in a two-handed grip. The front part of the bowcaster can swivel, so it can either be horizontal like this, like a crossbow, or it can be vertical, like a regular archery longbow. And when he not using it as a weapon, the side of this weapon can fold in, so it's more concealable. In the end, despite I'm not really wowed by the character design, just a normal looking dude in a robe, uh, I am really glad to have this action figure because I really enjoyed this character in the movie, and it's another great Asian representation on my shelf, and also a good representation of a badass blind martial art guy. Now let's look at his friend, the bigger and more cynical and more heavy-set Baze Malbus, who is also a good Asian representation in his own right. When it comes to character design, Baze Malbus is more my cup of tea. He looks Chinese, he is big and burly, and he has long black hair that is graying, and he is a very cynical and a gruff person. Hey, he reminds me of me. um, and he's also sporting more interesting outfit. He's wearing like a loose looking, wrinkly flight suit. And he got maybe stormtrooper armor that he took from his enemy over top of that. So he looked like he means business, and the armor make him look even more bulky than he already is. I will say that for me, there's something odd going on with the shoulder of this action figure. That armor make him look like either his neck is too long or his arms are too low. But there's a huge section of shoulder armor there that make his proportion seem a little bit off. Uh, I mean, maybe that's how it's supposed to look, but yeah, it just seems a bit weird that he doesn't seem like he has any shoulder at all under there. There's all kind of cool looking gadgets all over him. This action figure is one of those figures that you kind of hold in your hand and you look at all the pouches and uh, gadgets he's carrying and you're like, oh, I wonder what that do. I wonder what that is. Like uh, across his abdomen, belly area, there are these little square packs. Those are actually like energies for laser or for his firearm, I think. And he also had other pouches over his armor and around his hip. Now, in theory, he should be as just as well articulated as his friend Chirrut Îmwe, but because Baze Malbus is clad in this uh, bulky kind of space armor thingy. So a lot of his articulation points don't want to work very good. His long hair definitely restricts his head movement, and the bulky armor around his chest and shoulder make it difficult to move his arm in any creative ways. Although the elbows do work fine, his ankles also don't have any kind of forward movement, making posing him in any kind of dynamic stance really difficult. This is one of those action figures that the joints are there, but they don't seem to want to work. He is able to hit a very convincing T pose with his arms, but the pouches around his waist and hips prevent his legs from going outward, so he can't even do a very wide stance. Not to mention these pouches and gadgets around his belly and waist make him seem a little pudgy. I hate to say this because I know he's not supposed to be a pudgy guy, and it's just his armor and his gear making him look that way. Believe me, I have the same problem when I wear my fanny pack and jacket. I end up looking a bit pudgy, so I totally know how it is. But Colleen it how as I see it, as I feel it, Baze Malbus with all his gadgets around him and this suit of bulky armor, he's is coming across as a bit of a porker. When he's in combat, Baze Malbus is nothing like his more spiritual friend Chirrut Îmwe. Chirrut Îmwe fight very gracefully. Despite being blind, he uses a lot of cool martial art moves. Baze Malbus fight in a much more direct way. He uses weapons and gadgets, such as that little piece of gadget you see on his lower back. This actually can detach and he can hold it in his hand. I'm not really sure what that is supposed to be. Looks like a walkie-talkie, so it might be a communicator. But I remember during one scene of the movie, he used a taser to shock an enemy trooper. So maybe that's what that's supposed to be. I don't know. Maybe someone who sees this can let me know in the comment section. What is that little gadget that he stores on his lower back? When push come to shove, Baze Malbus decided to bring to the table a very lethal weapon, which is called a staccato lightning cannon. And this weapon is not even meant to be used on foot by people. This is supposed to be a machine-mounted heavy weapon. And yet in the movie, Baze Malbus was able to pick it up and use it like it's a common assault rifle, and he was deadly with that thing. Especially after witnessing the death of his best friend Chirrut Îmwe, he just started killing enemy troopers with this lightning cannon left, right, and center while chanting, I'm one with the Force, the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force is with me. Basically, the mantra of his best friend. In the end, Baze Malbus met his death when one of the troopers, enemy troopers, uh, exploded a grenade. So, unfortunately, our hero like everyone else in Rogue One, ended up dying, but he had some really badass moment just using that super heavy assault cannon to destroy his enemies. The lightning cannon, in this case, come in three separate pieces that you have to put together for the figure. Uh, the big piece you see here is a backpack, which fit onto his back. This is the energy cell for the cannon. So this is basically the battery that powers the cannon in the movie. It is really well painted with all kinds of technological details sculpted into it. And then there's this long power cable that looked a little bit like a bandolier that lead from the backpack into the cannon itself. Um, that is quite flexible, so if you're careful, it won't hamper his movement too much. Although it is a little bit on the short side, so in some poses, it will pull the cable out of the backpack or out of the cannon. And then there's the cannon itself. However, as badass as this thing is, I will say that it seems small. I mean, it's supposed to be an assault weapon that can only be used while mounted on a robot or vehicle, and the whole thing that make Baze Malbus seems like a badass character. Is he's able to pick this up and start using it like it's a regular gun. Well, it's only about the size of a regular gun. Like it's really not that big. Uh, I don't have another uh, gun wielding Star Wars character nearby right now, but it's no bigger than most of the regular uh, weapons and stormtroopers and shock troopers. Uh, Maybe slightly longer, but definitely not what I would call canon. More at best, it's more like a repeating shotgun. So the size is a little bit underwhelming. Yeah, I know that's what she said. Anyway, no Chinese related size joke there, but yeah, for something like called as staccato lightning cannon, this thing is oddly small. Like I said earlier, because of a lot of his joints refuse to work properly because of how bulky he is and all this armor stuff, he sadly can't really get into a proper two-handed pose with his weapon. Now, what's interesting here is when he has his backpack and cannon equipped, we see that he actually has a cape, just like his friend Chirrut Îmwe. However, for some odd reason, his cape is hanging from his backpack. So I don't know what the deal is there. Like, did he get hot and decided to just take his cape off and hang it on his backpack like that? I mean, I do that with my jacket sometimes when I have to wear a backpack. I just hang my jacket over the top of my backpack. So I don't know, or is it some weird character design that makes the cape be part of the backpack? Because to me, it would make more sense to have the cape over the top of his armor and then have his backpack over top of that. But hey, I mean, maybe that's just his character design, and there's something I don't know. And what do I know? I'm not a Star Wars character. Of all my Star Wars action figures, which really isn't that many, like I said, because I'm not too impressed by the character designs and choices so far. Um, but I have about 20, 25 of them. Um, of all my Star Wars action figures, Baze Malbus and Chirrut Îmwe are two of my favorite. They are very near the top, being my favorite Star Wars action figures in my collection. Not because of anything to do with Star Wars, although the characters were definitely really cool in the movie. But one is a blind Chinese-looking martial art master, and the other one is a big and burly Chinese-looking guy with heavy weapons. But these two uh, definitely uh, intrigue me just on uh, their own merit, and they go very well together. Thank you for checking out today's Toy Thursday, and I hope you enjoyed this episode made for Star Wars Day. Uh, and I'll be back again tomorrow for some Fitness Friday. For now, have a good night.